Whether it's bringing back and upgrading an old classic, or pushing something new to its absolute limits.
Bigger! Bigger! Perfect.
There is no end of beautiful ways to build in Shadow of the Erdtree. So hello, my fellow Tarnished, and welcome, as today we go over 5 more ridiculously strong, ridiculously fun, ridiculously third adjective builds to get you massively motivated for many murders. So without further ado, let's get into this latest and greatest collection of builds that I have designed for you guys. And if at least one of them doesn't appeal, then I will, I guess be a little bit sad. I really like them, work really hard on them, so I hope at least one of them does. In any case, as always, you can find detailed, in-depth build guides to every single one down below, and I will include a quick TLDR on them here too, if that's more your thing. Apologies for not doing so the last couple of times. In any case, then, let's begin at number 5. It's that old idiom, the two certain things in this world, death and taxes. Well, here you combine them together and deal death with bloody taxes, and it is phenomenal. But it's not just bloody tax, of course not. It's an old Ash of War. Yes, it got buffed a few times, and yes, it is one I have always absolutely loved, but never quite got to fully pop off. However, now, thanks to the Sword Lance, the new remembrance weapon from Mr. Boar Rider, yeah, it is doing work. The Sword Lance itself, with the lance charging heavies and the heavy thrusting sword pokes, is a phenomenal weapon, but it has an incredibly high amount of status compared to the other heavy thrusting sword levels. We get like colossal amounts of bleed build-up on this, which combined with the many pokage of bloody tax is a recipe for, well, a bleed every time you bloody tax. But it's not just that. Bloody tax heals you massively, which means you can combine this, if you want to take it in a fun direction, with the new Wondrous Tier that heals you when you deal damage, with the Godskin Swaddling Cloth Talisman, for a triple whammy that means you essentially, as long as you're not getting beaten up by every single hit, don't need to flask, because every time you press this Ash, you get like 30-40% of your health back, which is absolutely ludicrous. So you're essentially an unstoppable, immortal, blood, death dealing son of a gun, and it gets the job more than done. So you do end up with the Sword Lance set to Blood Infusion with bloody tax on it. The talismans and stats are as follows, as you can see, and then because of all the healing in your wondrous physic, we can get away with the new blood sucking tier, as we just counter the health drain for a free 20% damage, and then the second option can either be Opaline for damage reduction, the heal when damage dealt, or finally damage on consecutive hits to build up that ramping damage along with the talismans. The usual armor for big damage with blood, the white mask and Rakshasas, and you are good to go. Over to 4, where we are going to hit things very hard with our fists, but not just any fists. Poisoned decaying fist. That doesn't sound better on the surface, does it? But it is, because this is fabulous. The new poisoned hand weapon. Relegated in most builds to a mini talisman in your offhand, giving you a 7.5% damage boost when poison or rot occurs. Okay, that's cool and all, but it deserves to be used too, and used well it is. Think Star Fists, Poison Stacking Damage Edition. This thing with its Ash will instantly in most enemies proc Deadly Poison, which then combined with itself for Exaltation of Rot and the Mushroom Crown is a whole load of AR skyrocketing to then feed into your heavy fist moveset spam stagger chaining hits that only do obviously ridiculous damage, but yes, as I said, you will stagger the boss every 2 to 3 heavies and then weaken combine that with more damage when you do a crit attack, the Blade of Mercy new to the DLC, and the Dagger Talisman itself to do even heavier crit hits themselves, you will just be rolling in power. It's incredibly satisfying to actually use this weapon as a weapon, have all of this stacking damage build up, and then just heavy slap down the boss with literally your bare fists. It works wonderful against Radahn, so you know it works wonderful against everything else. So, as you might imagine, you want yourself the Poisoned Hand, you want a seal for buffing, the stats on the right, your talismans are Exaltation, the heavy charged attack talisman, the Dagger Talisman, and the Blade of Mercy, Mushroom Crown and Rakshasa for full min-max, and then your wondrous heavy attack, and then either Blood Sucking or Opaline, depending on how risky you want your damage to be. Next up then, in our cavalcade of carnage, is Stormblood. There's something entirely satisfying about combining razor winds swirling about and sprinkling just a tiny bit of blood flame in the mix to really give it that edge. This is a spin on something I came up with in the base game, using a big long katana covered in blood flame to fire out stormy blades or swirl with Stormcaller, and generally it worked brilliantly. And now in the DLC, it's even better. The Great Katana is essentially just a strict upgrade for the build. The various Ashes of War have since been buffed, and we have the new talisman from the Remembrance of the Divine Beast that buffs all storm-based, well, things, of which Stormcaller and Stormblade Ash of Wars count, which all combines together to give you a really meaty, fun, and most importantly, flexible build, because the build is identical no matter which Ash of War you use. You simply swap on Stormblade or Stormcaller depending on the situation. Stormcaller has the highest output potential if you can just do the whole thing next to a boss, whereas Stormblade gives you that ranged poke for decent damage and still really good rapid hits with successive hits on a close range target, because both the blade and the Stormblast hit at the same time. You get that blood build-up, you get that proc of Bloodlords and the White Mask, your AR skyrockets, and you just start cleaving away with the wonderful wind. So to set this up, you want a heavy Great Katana, the stats are on screen, and either Stormcaller or Stormblade, depending on your preference / the encounter you're doing. Then you want your Alexanders, you want the new Divine Beast Talisman, and then you want Bloodlords. The final Talisman slot is flexible, it is up to you. Dragon Crest, the Great Default for just some more damage reduction, but you can choose what you like here. And then armor-wise, White Mask Rakshasas. In your Wondrous Physic, you want yourself Opaline for a little bit more damage mitigation, and then Blood Sucking for max offense, or Rapid Successive Hits for a little bit of less offense, but still really good offense. Then we move on to this, something that I am very happy with. As I said in my dedicated build on it, which again, down below, we all know that Carrion Grandeur does a lot of damage, but actually both A, min-maxing that damage, and B, landing it consistently is rather difficult. Yes, you get a bit of poise on a greatsword, but it's still not enough to use it fully charged against essentially any boss. They will break you out of it. So I have gotten 3 separate methods to land it. Have it hit so hard that you don't need to worry about trading. Have an Iron Jar setup where you just full-on face tank trade with the Ash, like against Radahn, and it worked beautifully. Or combine it with a cheeky bit of Endure on a little dagger to then full hyper armor through boss attacks like Messmer's opening, so you're just straight up charging the full Grandeur while he's busy flailing about, exploding and doing nothing to you. Whichever way you go, it is supremely beautiful to slam down with this 10 to 20k, depending on the variation hit, that then has another 10 to 20k follow-up sweep that then does ridiculous poise damage and will likely stagger most things in the 2 hits, so you then get a crit hit afterwards. It is just glorious in every sense of the word, and I cannot recommend it enough. Setting this one up then is also involving the Lizard Greatsword, which gives you a special ranged heavy attack that can hit on top of the weapon itself. We use frost so we can easily apply frostbite, and then we do 20% more damage as we reduce the enemy's defenses by 20% from the frostbite. I love that the Lizard Sword is actually peak for this, as it's a really fun one to use. In any case then, yeah, you want the Lizard Greatsword set to frost with Carrion Grandeur on it. You want a random dagger with Endure, you want a seal for your buffs, and all of that loveliness. Stats, of course, as always, are right there. And then you want yourself a random glintstone staff, because Terra Magica is getting involved. One of the delights of any magic damage based build, it's a huge buff. Armor-wise, you want either Rogiers or Rakshasas, whichever one you can get away with while still medium rolling. Rakshasas is best because despite it making you, air quotes, take more damage, it doesn't actually, it just has lower negation than similar weighted armor, but still more negation than Rogiers set. And then Talisman-wise is very straightforward. Alexander's, Godfrey's, your Magic Scorpion, and some Dragon Crest to help out your defenses. In your Wondrous Physic, the Magic tier, and then Opaline for even more defenses, or if you're absolutely crazy, go for Blood-Sucking. If you'd like the max damage madness variant, then definitely do check out the dedicated video on this, as it's a little bit more in depth and more the scope of this collection. Finally then, there is old classics for a reason, and this might be the classicest of them. A build I was beyond proud to come up with and first popularize: the jumping, seppuku'd up, curved swords. Either scavengers or bandits will do, and you just jump in the boss's face and ruin them in 3 to 4 jumps. It's outrageous, disgusting, and the fact it still exists is hilarious. There is nothing quite like it. Blasphemous Blade is more forgiving and tanky with the heal and reliable. Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike has that maximum potential to just one-shot, but nothing in the game compares to just the steady, unbelievable DPS that this provides, and I think it is fair to argue it as the best build that literally exists in Elden Ring if your goal is just pure easy boss deletion. And I, of course, could not resist then updating it and upgrading it with everything new in the DLC that applies. I don't need to explain this one too much if you were around back then, but if you weren't, the principle is really simple. The jumping attack on Power Stance Curved Swords is a 4-hit. You get blood on them via Seppuku and their natural bleed. You set to Occult Affinity, which gets you some really nice AR. You put on all the boosters to both bleed and jumping attacks and multi-hits, because you're hitting 4 times a jump, and you just jump into the boss and hit that attack button. And the results are, as you can see, spectacular. The DLC gave us the Blood-Sucking tier for the 20%, Rakshas's armor for an extra 4% as you only use the gloves and the legs, and we even have a new item that massively gives it an edge. And really, what more can I even say about it? The setup, as I've just described, very simple. A curved sword in both hands, either double scavengers, double bandits, or one of the other. If it's bandits, you set to bleed. If it's scavengers, you set to occult. Pump your arcane, the stats as you can see. And then you want bloodlords, you want the claw talisman. Then Millie's prosthesis, rotten winged. In your wondrous physic, you have successive hits build damage. And then blood-sucking tier. You have your usual random seal with your buffs for Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow. You put on the White Mask and either of the 2 jump attack boosting armors, the new one in the DLC I much prefer aesthetically, and off you go to the races. I hope then you have enjoyed this latest collection, and I will of course be back with the next one. We are testing everything constantly, and I spend quite frankly way too many hours a day combining things and seeing what I can come up with for you guys, but I absolutely love it, and I will keep doing it, so look out for future builds, and I hope you enjoy any you do indeed use. Thanks for listening. Like you've enjoyed this, subscribe, hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye. Bye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.